This podcast is brought to you by TaxCalc. Tax, accounts and practice management software loved by accountants in firms of all sizes.
Welcome to the TaxCalc podcast of the TaxCalc webinar, Extracting Maximum Value from Your Software. Presented by Andy North and Dean Shepherd, with special guest Billy McLaughlin. The original webinar was broadcast on the 11th of September 2024 and can be viewed at www.taxcalc.com/events. Please be aware that deadlines, rates and other technical details referenced may have changed since this date.
Hello and welcome back to TaxCalc TV, your monthly fix of insight and enlightenment delivered free of charge by the people behind your favourite accounting software. It's been an age since we were here with you last. Unfortunately we had to cancel our session with MTD due to the election. We were hoping to have more on that shortly, and we'll be bringing that to you. Today though, we are looking at where we're all going wrong with software. The age-old problem of using only 10% of the functionality that you're actually paying for. I think we're all guilty of it. I'm a prime example myself. I get, you get started with a routine, you get fully aware of all the menus and buttons, but you never use them. And then someone mentions this nifty little trick, and then it changes your life. Well, we want to put a stop to that. It's time to build systems into your firm that make it far more likely that you're going to fully exploit the software that you've already bought and realise the return on investment that prompted you to buy it in the first place. So to explore this, we're joined by two of the great minds of accounting. Firstly, Dean Shepherd, our head of customer engagement, and previously the owner of his own small firm. Dean admits that he didn't take advantage of all of his own systems. And also the wonderful Billy McLaughlin, the tech guru at 2020 Innovation. Billy used to be in practice, but now spends her weeks providing tech advice to the member firms of 2020. Thanks very much for joining us, Billy. We were also going to be joined by the wonderful Nick Moss, but unfortunately he's been unavoidably detained. And I appreciate that many of you are only here to see Nick, so I want to let you know to avoid the bitter disappointment when you realise he's not here. But before we get into debugging your firm's challenges, we need to do a bit of housekeeping. Yes, of course, we will be doing a recording of this and we'll send that out shortly after. Secondly, please do chat to us. We love your comments. We'd like to hear your questions. You've got two options for that. So you've got the chat function that I think Dean's already been contributing to. That, as usual, is shared by everyone. Everyone can see what you write. The Q&A function is where you go. If you want to make a confession that you've bought some software and never got it out of the box, that's where you go, because no one else can see those questions, only us. So that's for you. And we will be doing some polls as well, and those polls, there's a polling option down there, so you can use that I think a little red dot will appear when that poll goes live. I hope, anyway. We shall see. You never know. So, what kicked this off? The wonderful people at Accounting Web have launched a new service called Accounting Web Intelligence. And I was in conversation with those guys, and they have conducted a piece of research that really talked to how much firms are spending on technology and what kind of return on investment they're getting from it. So if we could bring up the first slide, this is just some of the data that's in there. The headline message is that for years and years, the baseline proportion of investment in technology was around 4% of turnover. That has jumped to, it's nearly doubled, it's 7.6%. And in particular, that seems to be higher in the smaller firms than it is in the larger firms. So Billy, you had some data on that as well, if I'm right?
Yeah, so we did benchmarking a couple of years ago, and from what I remember on that, it was around 7.3% just across the board for all practices in IT. It is worth noting that was software and hardware. And actually in the higher performing practices, it was lower. So it was about 5.4%. So for the higher performing ones, they were not spending as much proportionately, which obviously would imply that they were getting enough out of their current systems without having to buy more.
Right. Excellent. So there is certainly a correlation there. So if we could bring the slide back again, we are certainly seeing an increase. So 61% of firms are spending more, and probably around a third of them are less than happy with that fact. So what conclusions we're drawing from that is that if the cost of serving a customer, if the cost of technology, which should be bringing either efficiency or allowing new services to be introduced, is not happening, turnover isn't going up, then we've got a problem with utilisation. And that's what we're here to look at today. So
I wonder if there's a couple of other things that might be influencing those figures a little bit, certainly from back when I had my practice. Obviously the proliferation of software as a service, so monthly subscriptions for a lot of the software now. I can certainly remember lots of pieces of software that I would have bought as a one-off purchase at the beginning, and if I had no particular need to upgrade or update that software, then that piece of software would keep running forevermore. So that may factor in a little bit. And also might be in the data but not clear from the chart whether those practices that are paying a lot more proportionally for their overall tech spend, whether they are incurring a lot more of that technology on behalf of their clients. I'm thinking in particular bookkeeping software. So in my practice, typically for the bookkeeping solutions, I would be paying for that on my client's behalf, so that technology spend would be hitting my P&L.
yes,
And whether you're the practice that does that and takes care of the billing in-house, or whether you have the billing taken care of by your client directly, that would, I would think, have quite a sizable impact on those figures.
and what I don't know is whether that's been factored into this and whether that is simply the spend from the firm or what they're then clawing back. But
And what we saw, I think one of the reasons why a lot of firms did start adopting that cost on behalf of their clients is because when the inception of the cloud accounting kind of took off massively, there was this like stack it high, sell 'em cheap mentality from a lot of the vendors, which is fine. And a lot of accountants thought, great, we'll just gear up for it, with a little bit of naivety of how hard it was to actually then shift those licenses later on down the line. So they ended up gearing up far too early and far too much for the need that was actually coming down the road, I think.
I think there were a lot of factors to this. I don't think there's any question about that. But as Michael has added into the chat, I think because this basically started us along this track of exploring this idea that there is a utilisation problem, and Michael makes the comment that Windows 95 was called that because 95% of it was never used, and I think that's probably largely true. Thanks for that, Michael. But yeah, I don't think anyone's going to deny that we've all bought technology. We've all been given a bit of software and used very few elements of it. I mean, I'm still discovering stuff in our core systems that I didn't know existed. So I think that's a problem. So Dean, what do you wanted to ask? Oh no, you've got a poll question, so you'd like to
I do have a poll
launch that,
question.
so.
Yeah, so I'm just going to see if for the people on this call, that data that Accounting Web provided to us, whether that rings true for the attendees of this call. So going to ask the question there, what do you estimate your annual technology spend to be? And I know people are going to be rushing to their TB to figure out the exact percentage, but just your best guess will do at this stage. So hopefully the poll's popped up on your screen, maybe with a little red button in the bottom right to indicate the poll's gone live. But yes, if you're spending, you think, less than 5% of your turnover, 5 to 6%, which I think the Accounting Web poll suggested most, or 29% of people were in that range. If you're a bit more, or if you're in the 10% plus, and the Accounting Web data suggested about 25%, I think it was, were in that higher bracket of spend. So do cast your votes there. And I think, Billy, did you say in your research, what was the sort of percentage spend that you saw in the higher performing?
So the high performing was 5.3, I think, as opposed to an average of over 7. So yeah, a lot less.
Okay. So everyone's going to be hitting that 5 to 6 now, so that they can
We are high
classify themselves as high
That
performers.
means you're a high performer if you hit that. So what have we got? How's it panning out?
Okay, so there's a fairly even split there. So we've got about 30% are spending less than 5% of their turnover on tech. 27% in that 5 to 6 range, which rings pretty true with the accounting web data. 22% spending between 7 and 9. And 19% of you are big spenders, 10% plus.
Wow.
Of your turnover on tech.
So, as I said, I mean, this is off the back of a historical figure of around 4% being spent as a very, very rough rule of thumb. So,
Actually, I would like to interrupt you just
go on.
for the hell of it and ask people, actually, on that point of whether you're recharging your clients for the bookkeeping, because I started off doing that initially, like Billy said, it was promoted actively by the cloud bookkeepers to do so. So I started off doing that, but then I later on switched to having the billing taken care of the client themselves, mainly because it just made the cost of me inflated in my client's eyes. I felt when they come to get the bill from me every month, they're seeing a much higher figure, which put a bit of downward pressure on me, even though a chunk of that I'm not really seeing any of. I might be making a bit of a margin, but it makes me look more expensive doing that way.
Yeah.
So if you're doing that method, perhaps you can just type recharge in the chat if you're incurring the cost and recharging it rather than having the bookkeeping
And
providers do it
not
directly.
recharge.
No, we'll assume no comment.
We're going to assume everyone else does that just by default. Okay.
100%,
So I'm
yeah.
not sure that's scientific somehow. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of people recharging, as you would, because you've only said recharge. And no one's saying not recharge.
I think with you saying 19% were such big spenders, the first thing that came into my mind was I bet a high proportion of them are recharging. So it'll seem like a high amount, but actually they'll be getting that back anyway. And as Dean said, maybe even making a markup on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd like to think.
Yeah. So, Michael's using Go Cardless to get paid, which helps. So, okay. So, the recharge does look to be a popular way of doing it. So, why would you want to do that over simply adding that, getting that contract put into the client's name and just having them pay direct?
I mean, my initial reasons for doing so, I suppose the markup, like I would perhaps quote the client the RRP, and lots of the providers are just hand out huge discounts. I'd make a bit of a markup on it. But also back then, it's probably neither here nor there now, but back then it was a little bit easier to kind of set up the client and have everything managed under my one central login than have it disparate across different customers. Although I think nowadays it's whichever way the billing takes place, you can manage it all under one.
But I guess also it feels like you're providing that full service then.
Yeah.
Everything is coming through you and you're buying it from you. There's loads of comments coming in, so we'll get onto that. But we had a question in the registration. So do you want to talk about, because what we're really interested in is how to analyse your firm and find out what software is being utilised, which of your staff are utilising to what extent, and then furthermore how to actually build structures into your practice in order to reduce the amount of non-utilisation. So we asked some questions a question I think about the things that blew their minds. So
Yes. So we asked what software feature across any of your business applications did you discover by chance but now consider essential? So in terms of some of the answers that people gave, and by all means throw some more into the chat for people to see. On the tax calc front, so we had quite a few things that people are doing within tax calc that either aren't widely known or weren't known by them until they happened upon them. There were quite a few around custom fields and mailing lists, so that's within Communications Centre. I would use that. I mean, that functionality can be used in so many different ways to communicate, to tailor communications to individual clients or types of clients. I think the example we always give is on the kind of January, July tax payment reminders. I know Nick, if he was here right now, he'd be saying, if you do nothing else, if you buy ComCenter for nothing else, then use it for your tax reminders, because we can pull all that information in from the TaxCalc database, exactly which of your clients has a payment on account to make, how much that is, and you can pre-populate that information into a mailing list and send it out to all those clients as a reminder in one. So he says if you use Communication Centre for nothing else, then that's worth the cost of it just to do all those tax reminders. But there's lots of interesting things you can do with custom fields, because you can just create any type of field you like. One of the things I did that was perhaps a little bit different to the way a lot of practices run it is with a fee protection scheme. So the typical route for fee protection is either you'll take a client decide type policy, so you'll promote it to all your clients, but only the ones that take it up you would then pay for and be covered, or they would pay you for that service. For me, I used to take an all-client policy, so my whole practice is covered for any types of inquiry. But in terms of charging that service to my clients, I would have gold, silver, bronze levels of cover. So the gold cover might include all types of taxes, all types of inquiry, cover you for family members and your different business interests as well as yourself. Silver might just be you personally covered, but for your business and for you individually. And bronze might just be one individual tax. So you might just be covered for VAT inquiries, or you might just be covered for income tax inquiries. And for me, being able to manage that, who's bought what, who have I promoted it to, who haven't I, was very difficult without using something like Communication Centre, where I can basically have all my clients. I can have a custom field for the type of cover they've got, whether it's gold, silver, bronze. I've got a standard renewal template each year, sends out to all my silver customers. Understood you got silver last year. Do you want the same thing again this year, or can we offer you the gold service? Very easy to run kind of marketing type campaigns or renewal type campaigns through TaxCalc. But if you want to learn more tax calcy things, we've got an event for you to attend.
We've got an event. So a few people have mentioned in the chat and in the questions that what they're looking for kind of best practice on using TaxCalc. We're not really, this is not so much about that. This is about that kind of more meta idea about how you actually institutionalize better use of technology in your firm. And we've got a tool that's coming up, I'll show you a little bit later, that we can help you with on that. But we do if you're not a regular at the Power Hours, anyone shout in the chat if you're a regular Power Hour attendee. We do a monthly session which will be kicking off at the latter part of the year on the 25th of September, and that is exactly that, where you get to sit with myself and Dean and Nick and whoever's around from our expert team to explore the different uses of technology, so you can, of TaxCalc. So you can call in, you can ask a question directly and have that answered. We'll demo the software to you, and you can get the best tips and tricks out of that. So 25th of September, we'll make sure that everyone who is registered today gets an invite to that.
Fabulous. One of the other suggestions that came in, non-TaxCalc related, was integrating Calendly for people that use Calendly with Outlook, so it can look at what availability you have, so you don't have back and forth all the time with your clients. And I think in terms of not utilising or maximising the software that you've got at your disposal, I think, Billy, you had some suggestions there on functionality that already exists.
Yeah, exactly. So within Microsoft 365, and I think this is probably one of the most underutilized systems, because majority of the people on this call will have a subscription with Microsoft 365. They have one called Booking, where you can set that up. Really interestingly, when you open up an email to send it, you can have a Calendly integration that just like whips the link across to that person. And the beauty of it is you can choose how long they can see time in your calendar. So you might just send it to somebody for a year-end meeting and give them an hour. It might be 15 minutes discovery call with a new client, for example. So depending on how long you want, you can send it. Interestingly, the Microsoft version, despite it being created by Microsoft, does not integrate to Outlook. So at this point, and this is a really great, I guess, example of where you kind of should be looking and weighing up the pros and cons, is do you use a system you've already got and that you're already paying for, but maybe it lacks a slight bit of functionality and you have to manually put the link in, or do you pay for an additional software and therefore that percentage goes up, but it saves you that time in terms of being able to just integrate it into the email. So yeah, I think it's always worth exploring your current systems, and this person in particular might have done that. I personally have done it, and I prefer Calendly over Booking. But if money is tight, or you decide that you'd rather just use one system, it's always worth investigating what you've already got. And Microsoft 365 is great for that.
A classic example of technology that you had, but you weren't using fully. Right there.
Yes.
And then you had some other comments about Dext as well you were going to bring up.
Yes, I had a conversation with a member of ours just last week who said that they've just started using auto publish. And I mean, this has been around for a very long time. And they paired it with the invoice fetch feature. And they said that they've actually cut down on like one or two clients. Over 50% of the bookkeeping is literally just from fetched directly from the supplier and goes straight into their bookkeeping system without the bookkeeper having to do anything at all, because they know that Vodafone always goes to phone, for example. I don't know why I say phone because it sounds horrible in a Hull accent, and I always choose that as my example. So they always just auto publish that right through, which is great. And it's amazing how many people just, they know the features exist, they're built within it, and yet they just choose to not use it, or they think it's going to take time to learn it. And it's, you know, it can save them a very, very huge amount of time. And what that allows is then your bookkeepers to move on to something else or look for other features, for example. I mean, the other thing that's a really great example with Dext is when you find these new features, how you then communicate them with your clients. So they've recently announced one where if you get an invoice on your phone, for example, you can hold your finger down, and then where normally you would export it to like email or messenger, you can export it directly to the Dext app. That's great. In-house as accountants, we probably won't use that very much, but using, for example, what Dean was just saying then with custom fields, if we had a custom field in our CRM system, we could then look at you know, sending that to all Dext users of our clients and telling them how to do this. So there's quite a few things in these systems that people just aren't using.
Absolutely, and I think these are even quite advanced. I mean, compared to some of the ones, because I'm you know, looking at this from a kind of an Andy perspective of using technology, which is basic. And we so after the first power hour that we did, we had an email came in from one of our customers. They've been using TaxCalc for 12 years, and they said that they hadn't realised, and they may be on in the chat now, so please say hi, hadn't realised that you could switch between clients just within the system. So they were logging out and then logging back in again every single time they wanted to switch between client, which I thought was great, but it was exactly the kind of level of the lack of utilisation that you can see.
Can I just say that we did have a member who bought a firm, and on his first visit to the firm after he'd bought them, one of the accountants was looking at a spreadsheet on a screen, pulling the calculator out and then adding up the columns on a calculator, because they didn't know that you could auto sum on Excel.
Now that,
and this was maybe less than 6 years ago.
I think they win. I think we should just go home.
I think that's a simple. That is
You want
very
to hear
simple.
my calling and casting
Go
story
on,
again.
do
don't you,
calling and
Andy?
casting. I love calling and casting.
So I won't mention the name of the firm I last worked for before setting up my own practice. I'm 99% sure it's not on my LinkedIn profile. But when I was being shown around the office of this firm, I could just hear all these numbers being shouted back and forth between people, and I had no idea what they were doing. So I asked someone, what are these people doing, lobbing numbers at each other? And they said, oh, they're calling and casting the accounts. And I was like, what on earth is that? And literally one person is reading out the hand-typed in Word numbers, while the other person is reading the numbers that were given to the secretary to type into the accounts, and they're reading them back and forth to each other to make sure those numbers have been transcribed properly. So that's the calling part. And then, as in Billy's example, they are then adding up all those numbers to make sure the total reaches the total, because they thought Word would be the perfect piece of technology to use for adding up numbers.
And they had software in place.
I mean, they had Excel.
Right, they had
software
Excel.
did exist. We're not going back that long. But no, they didn't. I can't imagine they weren't aware that there were accounts production options for them, but they, for whatever reason, chose not to invest in them.
I wonder where they would fit in our chart of investment in technology.
I could guess.
Probably guess. Okay, so what we'd like to do, so it's very clear that there are significant challenges. People are not using the technology that's available to them. So would you have a quick think through and look at why that happens? What are the I mean, in you guys, your experience, and anyone in the chat as well, what are the kind of root causes of that? Is it just kind of laziness, lack of interest, or is there more to it?
I feel like we might have some data on this one, Andy.
On slide 1A.
Slide 1A, yeah. So this is from Accounting Web, the team at Accounting Web Intelligence, and they asked what barriers were to practices not deploying or fully utilising the software that they'd committed to purchasing. And as you can see there, they're in order of what were creating the biggest barriers. So the biggest barrier that people identified was actually the challenge of changing from the process they're using today to the process using the technology. Second one, lack of time to implement, not having the skills internally. I'm surprised there's no mention of money here. That would be a primary barrier to any new bit of technology for me in my practice. I guess this is from the point of committed to buying. What is holding you back from fully utilising that software? Billy, what sort of things do you see in the practices you work with in terms of causing them delay to implementing new technology?
Well, I mean, it's the buzzword of time, isn't it? Nobody has the time to implement. But I think along with that comes sort of the intention. So what happens is people, they have all the best intentions. They go to a conference to see the shiny new thing. It looks great. And then how do they then find the time to implement it? Onboarding is always an issue, so transitioning from system to system is quite difficult. But once they're over and once they're kind of using it, who's responsible for keeping up to date with release notes, for example? Like, who reads the emails that come in from some firms using 20 plus software? Who is reading the release notes from 20 different software vendors? And who's responsible for communicating with the team about these new features? So I think it's that intention and accountability as well of keeping up to date. So it's very, very easy for it to be low down on the priority list.
Absolutely. Well, a lot of the people in here are also being, I mean, and Jane has just, I think, summed this up. Lack of time is the big one. And of course, the argument against that is if you utilise the tools as effectively as they can be, particularly if we just take tax calc. I mean, there are an awful lot of time-saving features, which we will be touching on in the Power Hour. There's an awful lot of time-saving features, which would free up several hours a week, which you could then use. You know, once you've done it once, then you've got that time back. I mean, I know we were talking earlier about what would you say? Like, give us some classic examples of
I mean, I was just thinking, I think it's quite easy to revert to lack of time as being the reason. And I might have said that if I was assessing my own practice. But for me, it wasn't really lack of time, it was lack of delegation. So I wouldn't have trusted, as much as I trusted my staff, I wouldn't necessarily have trusted fully in their ability to assess what is the best go forward technology solution for the practice as a whole. I certainly would have involved them in the process if we're looking at a new piece of technology, and work with them on the limitations they've got at the moment, what problems have they got, but delegating that to somebody else, something that's so important to the future of the practice, that would really have been the thing. I would have said lack of time because I haven't got the time to do it and I'm the one that's going to do it. But I guess it's lack of my ability to entrust that responsibility to somebody else in the practice.
Billy, is that something that you're seeing?
Yeah, definitely. And I think in terms of delegation, we've seen this rise of sort of like the cloud expert and things like that, which is great. But even if there is delegation, sometimes delegating the wrong person. So you need to make sure that person is quite influential. They've got to be very positive. So there's a lot of traits that you need to think about as well when it comes to that delegation for it to be successful. And then if somebody does want to take on that role, there's got to be an element of accountability. So I think sometimes when we adopt new systems, if we don't roll it out fully or we miss features and functionality, who's responsible for that? Who is responsible for us spending X amount but only using 60% of it? So we're actually wasting 40% of our cost because we're not using that element. So who's responsible? Who's going to be held accountable? And like, I don't mean we have to discipline people or anything, but there has to be an element of repercussion or expectation on that person to understand, give them free rein, explain to them of ways that they can succeed, which I'm sure we'll come on to in a moment. So yeah, I think that Dean's 100% right with the delegation, but I think if you want to go a bit further, delegating to the right person and hold them accountable is important too.
I think one other point, and this was Nick was referring to earlier, is there's a kind of cultural issue, which is around that if you work in a team and you've got a number of people around you and you discover something new within your software, you may feel that if you surface that as, hey, I found a shiny new thing, people will look at you and say, well, did you not know that before? Duh. And I don't know if that's, did you have that in your firm? Was that something people might have, do you see this, Billy?
Yeah, no, 100%. I've definitely seen this. And I've witnessed it myself when I was in practice. And then you almost feel a bit like, oh, like, hang on a second, like, why didn't I know about it? And that will prevent you telling people in the future. So there is, making that culture is super important. And making it in a way that people can share that knowledge and making it almost compulsory that people do, so that nobody just say, yeah, I did know that. It's like, okay, well then instead of putting it on the person that's just told you, let's put it back to you and say, well, why didn't you share it when you first found out as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there is an internal cultural thing, even if there's only two of you in the practice. Someone may go, I didn't want to bring that up because I might look like I should have known that.
Yeah, but the other thing is that people go as so kind of laser focused on what they're doing themselves, they don't necessarily stop to look up and think, oh, I've got some great things I can share with everyone else here. There was one I kind of remember from when I was many moons ago when I was training, and we'd buy a working paper file system from a certain provider, and Billy will laugh, she probably doesn't even know what a photocopier is, but we used to have a stack of these, maybe 30 template working paper sheets, and every time you started a job you'd grab that, put it in the photocopier, and there's your index and all your working paper cover sheets and all that kind of malarkey you need to set up your file. I was in that practice for about a week before I just recreated that whole thing in Excel, so I could do all my working papers in Excel rather than be handwriting the amount of Tipex mice we used to get through because you've
I
got
remember
to
them.
keep changing the cover sheets on these things every time a number changed or a file reference changed. So within a week I did it all in Excel, and I merrily did all my working papers in Excel. Did I stick my hand up and say, hey guys, let's just stop all this photocopying nonsense? No, I didn't.
You just get on and you look great, right? Because you're turning out twice as much work.
Yeah, and some people, when they realised what I'd done, would say, oh, can I have that template Excel spreadsheet? I was like, yeah, sure. But I would say that was probably only about a third of the accounts team that were using it. And that, like Billy says, there wasn't that culture of sharing better ways of doing things. And anything cultural is a follow my leader kind of approach. It's got to be led from above. And at that point, I was a trainee. I wasn't going to pipe up and tell, somebody who's been in that practice for 20 years that they're wasting their time doing all this photocopying when they should just use Excel.
Use what's there.
Yeah.
But I think also beyond that, there is the other issue, and that is that, I know here, we'll do 3-4 releases a year. They're very feature rich. A lot of new bits get added to TaxCalc, and people who may have been using the software for a decade have missed out because they're not reading the release notes. I mean, who reads release notes?
Me.
I don't know if you do, Billy. Well done.
I do.
I
I'm on the
totally
mailing list for like every software, and I read all of them.
You
I have
read them all.
RSS feeds set up and everything.
This is why you're here, though, Billy. This is why we have you, so that you can convey this to the world. But you might see the big 3 things, but there's probably 15, 20 things that are added in each new release, and people miss that, and we can't even let that slide. So we wanted to look at just very quickly look at some tools that you can analyse your practices, your own and your practices performance. Have you seen what have you seen, Billy, out in the field? Have you seen firms that have done this really well? What kind of things have they done?
In terms of speaking with the team, one thing that we have seen is rather than going out and finding a solution, a lot of practices now will go back to their current solution and say, when are you going to release this? And that is like probably the number one tip, because even I think a few months back I was speaking to somebody and they messaged me and said, we need to do groups, we're using TaxCalc, what can we use? And I was like, you do know it's getting released next week? And they were like, oh my gosh, well wait then. And it saved them so much time in going out and finding. So just asking the questions and kind of speaking to your account managers is really, really valuable. And then the other thing that I would say in terms of sort of analysing the team and getting the team involved is we've seen a few firms do kind of lunch and learns. So when people learn new things, they're speaking maybe once a month, they're getting together as a group and speaking to each other about anything that they've done this month, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, if anybody's got any tips on how to improve this. And yeah, that's a really good way of crowdsourcing internally those features that you're using.
Okay, so a lunch and learn kind of a collaborative session. Dean, any ideas from your travels?
Well, I always remember, I guess it's similar to lunch and learn, an event I went to that was probably the most useful in getting more out of the software that I was using at the time, and that was an event put on by the software supplier to come and see them with a bunch of other customers. They, I think, went through some of the key bits, a bit like we do in the Power Hour. They went through some key stuff that not everyone might be aware of. But actually the most value I got from it, and probably the most contribution, or the biggest contribution I made at that event, was actually just chatting to the other people who are also using the software and finding out the things how they use it and the things they use it for. And that just uncovered lots of little things that I wasn't aware the software could do, or tweaking it in a certain way, which I think is, it's the same outcome Billy was talking about with the lunch and learn, albeit in a slightly different format.
Yeah, I think it's to do with what you don't know, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's a real challenge, because if you've got something I really want to do, I can find out how to do it. But when you don't know, and I'm going to bring up my favourite, is the dual screen function on TaxCalc, where every time we mention this to anyone, the fact that you can go on TaxCalc, you can go to the Windows menu, you can go multi-screen mode, and you can have prior year accounts, current year accounts, you can have tax and accounts on multiple screens. And I don't think we've ever shown that to someone and their jaw hasn't dropped and gone, that's just blown me away. and I thoroughly enjoy that. So just a couple of things, and these are points that came from Nick about how you can build a kind of structure, and that is to give ownership of a particular piece of software to an individual, and they then share the idea how their favourite tricks, their favourite tactics with everyone else in the firm, who then can say, I didn't even know you could do that. And by doing that, just sharing, whether it's in a lunch and learn type environment, can be really, really powerful. And the other point was, if it is just you in the practice, is there a way that you can collaborate virtually or in real time with other local firms who use similar software? I don't know if you've come across that happening in the wider world, Billy?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we see it all the time now on LinkedIn. There's Facebook groups are super popular. At 2020, we have practice forums, and generally technology is a hot topic. So people say, we're looking at switching practice management systems. Who's used this? I'm moving from this. What were the difficulties? And that goes down really well. But I do want to just kind of revert back to something I just said, because I thought it might be helpful with you just saying that there will be practitioners that are maybe don't have a team as well. So once a quarter, I do like a quarterly roundup of all the release notes that I sit and read, because I'm sad, and I do kind of like new features in existing products as well as new products to market, so people aren't just seeing the shiny thing and switching. And yes, that's great if you can attend that for an hour once every 3 months, but a little tip for those that maybe aren't 2020 members or don't want to do that, if you use Teams, you can get an app within Teams called Feeder. And what I do is I subscribe to the newsletters of all these software using Feeder as my RSS feed. And what this does is it has a separate place within Teams where I can then just go and read all of this news, and it's not clogging up my inbox. So I think that's why a lot of it gets ignored, because our inboxes are already brimming. Xero sending us 3 emails this week about changing to pricing structure is just so low on our priority list. Whereas, if I get 5 minutes, I can just log onto my Teams and have a look at some of these different softwares and what they've got to offer. So that might be handy for people. And again, with Nick's tip about the ownership, you might allocate one person to do it for all the bookkeeping software. If you have got a bigger team, that is a great idea, because even if you don't use other software, it's good to know what's out there, because A, you might want to switch in the future, or B, it might be a good indication as to what's to come in the one that you're currently using. So you could allocate somebody to bookkeeping software, someone to tax, someone to accounts production, whatever it may be. And it's a nice, easy way for them to do that and then collaborate later on.
I had a question here about what is RSS Feeder?
So it's just, to be honest, it's quite an old school thing. It used to be on like the bottom of web pages, and it kind of summarized blogs. So how you can use it, again, I use it mainly for newsletters. So when you download Feeder, which is the name of the app within Teams, as I said, it's completely free. You can then search for websites, and every time that website is updated, it will send something to this. A bit like a Teams chat, it will send something to it. So you can just see when the websites are updated, or for example, if they send a newsletter out, it will appear in there for you.
Okay. So you can just say, I want everything around a certain subject into one feed?
Yeah, anything that, for example, I did it with Accounting Web, but I started getting every single time somebody asked a question in Accounting Web, it would pop up on my feed, so I had to get rid of it because it was just overwhelming. But you can set it up for the likes of, I don't know, I have quite a lot of AI ones on there. So AI websites, any updates that they give to news, I put it in there. So it's a bit like a news channel is a good way to describe it.
Okay. Well, I think it's probably time we looked at the diagnostic tool, don't you, Dean?
Yes, why not?
So, so these ideas, I hope this is useful for you. As I say, we're really just trying to look at that kind of underlying problem of not using software and not using the functionality that's available to you. So, we have come up with a tool which you might find useful. So in an attempt to address the issue of you don't know what you don't know, can we bring up the first of the slides? So this is the diagnostic tool. This is going to be available very, very shortly, and we will send this to everyone who is registered here. And so what's going to happen is you literally go into it. It's going to ask you which of the tools that you're using. So if you're using Practice Manager, you're using Corporation Tax, and you're using Communication Centre in this example, it's going to it will only focus on those pieces of software that you're using. And then what that's going to do is ask you this set of questions, which will be updated regularly. We're going to keep changing these questions, but it says, are you able to do these things? And it starts off with some pretty basic stuff and gets more and more complex. So you'll indicate, yes, I can absolutely do that, or no, I didn't even know that that was vaguely possible. And by doing that, you can build up a picture, and then the next slide will show you how you'll be able to generate an output, and you'll be able to see and aggregate this across your team to be able to say, okay, we are not working very well with this product. We're only using a very small amount of its functionality. Where you do that one, we're doing really well on. This one, we're not. So what we're trying to be able to do is to be able to give you that picture across your firm about what functionality that you are using and where you're probably investing in something but not getting the best out of it. So we hope that's going to be a really useful tool.
Yes, we do.
That's the plan. So Billy, have you seen anything like that elsewhere? Is that a new thing that you've...
No, I haven't actually. When you said earlier, I was thinking it would be really handy for other tools to have this. The reason why I mentioned Dext earlier is just because they are quite good at, I think Max and Paul, who you probably have seen on LinkedIn, are very good at kind of releasing a new feature and doing a short snippet on LinkedIn. But I've not seen anything which can help with like a tool like this, which keeps everybody in one place. So it's very, very good.
Well, hopefully everyone will pick this idea up, and there'll be one of these for every bit of software, which would be great, because the more people use software, the better, in our opinion. So we're going to this will be sent out. Yes, Suzanne, it's going to be hopefully within the next week or so. It will be sent out to everyone who's here. Please take it. We'd love to get your feedback on how it went. Now, of course, I don't know if everyone knew, we do offer a full training service as well. So if you are a TaxCalc customer, we have a team. So Nick heads that team up. There's 4 people who dedicate their entire lives to providing both online and in-person training. So online's probably the best bet, and you can buy 1 hour, you can buy a whole day. You can do online training in groups of 1 to 8. So if you've got 8 people in your firm, you can get all of those people for 2 to 3 hours to sit with Nick and either pick an individual piece of software that you want to master, or just have a general overview and sanity check, if you like. So that is all available. If you want to get in touch, so Dean, if you can go live with poll 2.
Yeah, I'm just going to put a poll out there. Simply, if you'd like to speak to one of our team about the various training options that we have available to help you better implement the TaxCalc suite, then just pop a little yes please answer to the poll, and we can get one of our training team to give you a call and have a chat.
I think this is something we're seeing a lot at the moment, is people really appreciating the value of getting in touch with their account managers. And I think this has come with the trend of the tightening up your tech stack, where people are not wanting to go out and buy new systems. They kind of need to take stock of what they've got. So this is something that we're seeing people are getting a huge benefit from. A lot of our firms are sort of taking some time out now and getting in touch with the account managers from the various software and being like, right, can you make sure that we know exactly what we're doing with this before? I think because what happens is you go and try and identify gaps, but a bit like what Andy said, if you don't know what you don't know, and if you go and identify a gap that you don't actually have, it's just that you weren't using something properly. So this is something that's super popular at the minute. So I'm really glad you guys are offering it out to TaxCalc users.
Great. Well, as I say, it will be as soon as it's ready, it will be distributed to everyone, and we really hope it's really important to us that firms get what they can, not just out of TaxCalc, but out of all of their software. But from a TaxCalc point of view, we build a whole lot of new functionality. We want to see it being taken advantage of, and we can get feedback and we can improve it and make things better and better. So, okay, hopefully that will save your life. How's it going? Are many people looking for a follow-up?
Yes.
Yep,
Got
busy.
Interest in the training. Yeah.
Nick's team is going to be busy. It does get very busy, particularly in that kind of latter part of the year. So we'll make sure that they get scheduled in. So, okay. Without further ado, I think we've covered what we needed to cover today. So just to be absolutely clear, the 25th of September, we're going to be back doing the first of the Autumn Power Hour season. If you want to put in a particular request, I know some people have in there.
Yeah, we've had people asking about the Communications Centre. We've been asking people about eSign Centre, so we'll make sure we cover those in the Power Hour.
Yeah, so if you want to put in, if you've got a particular thing that you want to cover, please put that in the Power Hour, put it in the chat, and we'll make sure that gets covered. We'll make sure you all get invited to the next Power Hour. They're really good fun, and we get to go through a whole lot of new features, and we'll be demoing using TaxCalc more specifically. And if you have done your diagnostic tool by that point, then we can feed that back into the information that we'll put out in the Power Hour. So Billy, what's up for you next? You've got an event coming up relatively soon.
We have,
Where
yes.
can people
We
see you?
will be at Accountex North, but then we've got our annual conference on the 5th of November. It's called Destination 2025. It's going to be really, really great. We've got a session on change, which I know scares the hell out of a lot of accountants. We've got a session on systematization. I'll be doing one called Me, Myself and AI, and there's a nice surprise in there for those that attend. And then we've also got David Mead talking about how to have like that growth mindset. So it's always a really great conference about growing your practice, and I'm hoping to see a lot of people there that are going to leave with that buzz. I know when I used to attend as an accountant, I used to leave like so energized on the way home thinking, I need to do all these things. So yeah, very excited.
And the big reveal, of course, is that Billy is here in AI form only. She's
This is
bot.
actually not me.
This is a bot. Okay, in that case, we thank you very, very much. Thank you so much for coming, Billy. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Dean, as well. Appreciate everyone being with us today, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Thank you.
You have been listening to the TaxCalc podcast of the TaxCalc webinar, Extracting Maximum Value from Your Software, presented by Andy North and Dean Shepherd, with special guest Billy McLaughlin. The original webinar was broadcast on the 11th of September 2024 and can be viewed at www.taxcalc.com/events. Please be aware that deadlines, rates and other technical details referenced may have changed since this date.